The clinking of crystal glasses at the Onyx Room usually signaled celebration, but tonight it sounded like a countdown to a funeral. Riley adjusted her apron, her 7-month baby bump pressed painfully against the service station counter. She thought the worst part of her day was the swollen ankles or the rude manager, until the heavy oak doors swung open. He walked in like he owned the oxygen in the room. Vincent Rossi, the ruthless dawn of the New York underworld, the father of the child kicking in her womb. And he was holding hands with a woman wearing a diamond ring that caught the light like a sniper's scope. He thought Riley was dead. Tonight, the dead were about to serve him dinner. Rain lashed against the floor-to-ceiling windows of the Onyx Room, blurring the lights of 57th Street into streaks of luminescent sorrow. Inside, the air smelled of truffle oil, expensive leather, and old money. For Riley, however, it smelled of exhaustion. She leaned against the wait station, pressing a hand to the small of her back. Being 7 months pregnant and working a double shift at Manhattan's most exclusive French restaurant was a special kind of torture. Her ankles were swollen to twice their normal size, and the standard-issue black uniform was stretched to its limit, despite the larger size she had begged Garrett, the floor manager, to provide. "Table 4 is open, Riley. Move it," Garrett snapped, walking past her with a stack of menus. He didn't look at her. He never did. To him, she was just Riley, the mute, desperate woman who washed dishes and occasionally bussed tables when they were short-staffed. Tonight, they were more than short-staffed. They were drowning. "I can't take the VIP section, Garrett," she whispered, her voice raspy. "Please, I'm not steady on my feet tonight." "You take what I give you, or you go back to the shelter," Garrett hissed, checking his watch. "The Rossi reservation is here. Don't embarrass me." The name hit her like a physical blow. The tray in her hand rattled against the marble counter. Rossi. The world seemed to tilt on its axis. It had been months of hiding in a grim motel in Queens, months of dyeing her platinum blonde hair a dull, lifeless brown, months of praying that Vincent Rossi believed the police report that stated Riley Russo had died in a car fire off the Jersey Turnpike. She turned to flee, to run back to the kitchen and hide among the steam and shouting chefs. But it was too late. The heavy mahogany doors swung open, held by the obsequious maitre d'. Vincent walked in. The atmosphere in the restaurant shifted instantly. It wasn't just his height, over 6'3" of broad-shouldered power, clad in a bespoke Brioni suit. It was the aura of absolute terrifying control he radiated. His dark hair was styled back, severe and sharp, highlighting the jagged scar that ran through his left eyebrow, a souvenir from a war she remembered all too well. But he wasn't alone. Clinging to his arm was a woman who looked like she had been sculpted from porcelain and spite. Isabella. Riley felt the bile rise in her throat. Isabella, the daughter of the rival crime family, the Calabresi. She wore a dress that cost more than Riley would earn in years, and on her finger sat a diamond the size of a quail egg. "Right this way, Mr. Rossi," the maitre d' cooed, guiding them to table 4, the secluded booth in the corner, shrouded in shadows and velvet privacy curtains. "Riley, water!" Garrett barked from across the room, snapping his fingers. Riley kept her head down, her chin tucked into her chest. She grabbed the crystal pitcher, her knuckles white. She had to do this. She had to be invisible. Just a servant. Just a pair of hands. If he saw her face, if he realized she was alive, the truce he had built with the Calabresi would shatter. And worse, if he saw the baby. She walked toward the table, her heart hammering a frantic rhythm against her ribs. Every step felt like walking through wet concrete. "I don't like this table, Vincent." Isabella's voice drifted out, high and complaining. "It's too near the kitchen drafts." "It's the most private table in the city, Isabella." Vincent's voice was a low rumble, a sound that used to lull Riley to sleep. Now it made her skin prickle with terror. "Sit down." Riley approached the table from Vincent's blind side. She focused entirely on the empty water goblets. "Don't look at him. Don't look at him." Water, she asked, her voice deliberately altering into a coarse, mumbled rasp. Sparkling, Isabella snapped without looking up from her menu. And make sure it's chilled properly. Last time the service here was abysmal. Riley poured. Her hand shook. A single drop of water splashed onto the pristine white tablecloth near Vincent's hand. Isabella gasped as if Riley had thrown acid. "Excuse me, are you incompetent?" Vincent didn't speak. He just stared at the droplet of water on the cloth. His hand, large and scarred, rested inches from it. He wore the watch Riley had bought him for his birthday, a vintage Patek Philippe. He still wore it. "I apologize, madam," Riley mumbled, keeping her face averted, her hair falling like a curtain to shield her profile. She reached out with a cloth to dab the water. As her hand moved, the sleeve of her uniform rode up slightly, just an inch. Vincent's head snapped up, his gaze locked onto her wrist. There, faded but visible, was a tiny, jagged white scar in the shape of a crescent moon. It was an old injury from a broken wine glass years ago, one he had bandaged himself in their kitchen while they laughed about her clumsiness. Riley saw him stiffen. She snatched her hand back as if burned, tucking it into her apron pocket. "Get us a bottle of the '96 Bollinger," Vincent said. His voice was different now, sharper, alert. He wasn't looking at the menu anymore. He was staring at the top of her head. "And look at me when I order." Riley froze. The baby kicked hard, a painful reminder of the stakes. If she looked up, it was over. I will get the sommelier, sir," she whispered, turning abruptly. "Wait," Vincent commanded. The authority in his voice was absolute. It wasn't a request. It was a summons. Isabella looked between them, her eyes narrowing. "Vincent, let the clumsy girl go. She smells like dishwater." "Sit down, Isabella," Vincent said. He didn't raise his voice, but the command was absolute. Isabella dropped back into her chair like a puppet whose strings had been cut. Vincent turned fully toward Riley. "Explain." Riley drew a shaky breath and pointed a manicured finger at the upside-down text. Section 14, subsection B. It references Code 88C regarding cross-collateralization. You're assuming this protects your assets if the subsidiary fails. "That is exactly what it does," Reed snapped. "No," Riley said, meeting Vincent's gaze. "It doesn't. Code 88C was revised 3 years ago. It now allows piercing the corporate veil if the acquired asset has pre-existing toxic debt declared within 48 hours of signing. If you sign this and his company declares insolvency on Friday, you don't just lose the investment. You become personally liable for the entirety of his company's previous debts." She paused, then delivered the final blow. "You're not buying a company, sir. You're co-signing a billion-dollar debt." The silence that followed was so heavy it felt capable of crushing lungs. Vincent stared at Riley for one long, agonizing second. Then he looked back at the paper. He read the clause. He read it again. Slowly, the polite, charming smile that had been on his face vanished. In its place appeared a look of such primal violence that Riley instinctively took a step back. He turned to Marcus Reed. Reed had gone deathly pale. Sweat streamed openly down his face. "Vincent, listen," Reed stammered. "She's a waitress. She doesn't know what she's—" "Did you know?" Vincent asked. His voice was a whisper. "It's a standard contract. My lawyers—" Vincent picked up the heavy crystal whiskey glass. He didn't throw it. He simply crushed it in his hand. Shards fell onto the pristine white tablecloth, mingling with drops of his own blood. He didn't seem to feel it. "Get out," he said. "If you are still in my sight in 10 seconds, Marcus, I will buy the bank that holds your mortgage and evict your mother. Get out." Marcus Reed scrambled. He left his briefcase, his coat, everything. He knocked his chair over in his panic, bolting past the confused hostess. Vincent sat alone at the table, his hand bleeding onto the contract. Riley stood frozen. She had just saved a crime lord hundreds of millions of dollars, and now she was alone with him. "Napkin," Vincent said. Riley jumped, snatched the linen napkin from her arm, and hesitated. Then her training took over. She reached out and gently pressed the cloth against his bleeding palm. "I'm sorry, sir," she whispered. "I shouldn't have interfered." Vincent looked at his hand, then up at her face. He really looked at her this time, taking in the fraying collar of her uniform, the exhaustion in her eyes, and the sharp intelligence burning behind them. "You read upside down," he stated. "Yes, sir." "And you know maritime law codes from memory." I read a lot." He gave a dry, humorless scoff. "Who sent you?" "What?" "Who sent you?" His gaze hardened. "A waitress who knows corporate law stops me from signing a bad deal. That's too convenient. Do you work for the feds? Or is it the Rossi family trying to gain favor?" "I work for tips," Riley answered, offended despite her fear. "And right now, I'm probably going to lose this job because I spoke to a VIP. Nobody sent me. I just hate seeing bullies win." Vincent studied her face, searching for any trace of a lie. He found none. He took the bloody napkin from her hand and wrapped it around his own palm. "What is your name?" "Riley. Riley Hale." She gave her mother's maiden name, the habit she had developed to dodge debt collectors. "Well, Riley Hale," Vincent said, rising. He towered over her. He reached into his jacket, pulled out a money clip, and dropped a thick stack of $100 bills onto the bloody tablecloth. Easily $5,000. For the tip. "I can't take that," Riley said instantly. Vincent paused. "You saved me $200 million, yet you refuse $5,000. "I did what was right," she answered. "Not for the money." Vincent stared at her, intrigued. In his world, everyone had a price. Everyone had an angle. A woman who refused money was either a unicorn or a very dangerous threat. "Clean this up," he said, gesturing to the shattered glass. "And Riley?" "Yes, sir?" "Don't leave town." He turned and walked out, his security team trailing behind him like shadows. Riley stood by the table, heart still pounding. She looked at the money, then at the bloody contract. Garrett, the manager, rushed over, face purple with rage. "What did you do?" "Reed ran out of here like his pants were on fire. Did you offend Mr. Rossi?" "No," Riley whispered. "You're lucky he didn't have you killed," Garrett spat. "Pack your things. You're done. Get out of my restaurant." Riley looked at him. Then she looked at the stack of cash Vincent had left. She didn't touch it. She simply untied her apron, dropped it onto the table right over the bloody signature line, and walked away. She still had her dignity. But as she stepped into the cold New York night, she knew one thing with chilling certainty. Vincent Rossi wasn't finished with her. 3 days. That was how long it took for Riley's life to unravel completely. After being fired from the Onyx Room, reality crashed down on her. Rent was due in 4 days. The medical facility caring for her brother Toby had left 3 voicemails about a billing discrepancy, code for pay us or we discharge him. She sat in her tiny, drafty apartment in Queens, staring at the ceiling. The water stain above her bed looked like a map of a country that didn't exist. "I need a miracle," she whispered to the empty room. A sharp knock on the door made her jump. It was 10 at night. No one ever visited. It had to be the landlord or a process server. "Who is it?" she called, grabbing the baseball bat she kept by the door. "Delivery," a deep voice answered. "I didn't order anything." "Miss Hale, it requires a signature." Riley hesitated, then cracked the door, leaving the chain on. The man standing in the hallway wasn't a delivery driver with pizza. He was a mountain in a black suit, a scar slicing through his left eyebrow, the kind of man who looked like he ate gravel for breakfast. "Riley Hale?" "Yes." "Mr. Rossi requests your presence." Riley's stomach plummeted. I'm busy." The man held up a thick black envelope, her name embossed in silver leaf. "It wasn't a question, Miss Hale. And he said to tell you, he knows about the medical bills." Riley went cold. He had investigated her. She undid the chain. "Give me 2 minutes to change." The car waiting downstairs was a black Maybach with tinted windows. The ride into the city was silent. Riley sat in the back clutching her purse, mind racing. Why would a mafia boss want to see an unemployed waitress? The car didn't stop at a restaurant or warehouse. It pulled into the underground garage of the Rossi Tower, a glass needle piercing the Manhattan skyline. She was escorted up in a private elevator that rose so smoothly she barely felt the movement. When the doors opened, she stepped directly into a penthouse larger than her entire apartment building. Floor-to-ceiling windows frame the city lights like a sea of diamonds. Modern art hung on the walls. Everything was cold, beautiful, and intimidating. Vincent Rossi stood by the window, gazing out at the city. He wore a white dress shirt with the sleeves rolled up, revealing surprisingly muscular forearms. The bandage on his hand had been replaced by a thin strip of medical tape. "You live in a closet," he said without turning around. "It's an apartment," Riley corrected, stepping onto the plush rug. "And it's rude to spy on people." Vincent turned. His expression was unreadable. "I don't spy. I conduct due diligence. Riley Bennett, or Hale as you prefer. Former standout at Columbia Law. Dropped out 2 years ago after your father passed and your brother was left needing 24-hour care from a hit and run." Riley felt stripped bare. "What do you want?" "I checked the contract," Vincent said, walking to a massive mahogany desk. "You were right. Marcus Reed was trying to leverage my assets to cover a toxic dump of debt. You saved me $250 million. "You're welcome," Riley said stiffly. "Is that it?" "No." Vincent picked up a file folder. "I fired my lead counsel yesterday. He was either negligent or paid off. I haven't decided which yet." "That sounds like a personal problem." "It is, but it creates an opportunity for you." He tossed the folder onto the desk. "I need someone who can read the fine print, someone who isn't part of the club, someone who isn't afraid to tell me when I'm walking into a trap." Riley gave a short, incredulous laugh. "You want to hire me as what? I'm not a lawyer. I never passed the bar." "I don't need a lawyer to file motions, Riley. I have an army of suits for that. I need a consultant, a personal auditor." He leaned against the desk, arms crossed. "I want you to review my personal investments, all of them." "I can't work for you," Riley said, shaking her head. "I know who you are. I know what you do." "And what is it that I do?" Vincent asked, voice dropping an octave. "You're the mob." Vincent smirked. "I'm a legitimate businessman with diversified interests in shipping, construction, and hospitality. What the newspapers say is gossip. Gossip doesn't usually come with bodyguards and blood on the tablecloth." Vincent's eyes flashed. He pushed off the desk and walked toward her with a predator's grace, stopping just a foot away. Riley had to tilt her head back to meet his gaze. He smelled of sandalwood and expensive scotch. "I'm offering you a job, Riley. A salary of $200,000 a year, plus bonuses, plus full medical coverage for you and your brother." Riley's breath caught. Full medical? That would mean getting Toby into the experimental neuro rehab program. It would mean he might walk again. "Why me?" she whispered. "You could hire Harvard grads." "Harvard grads are taught to follow the rules," Vincent said softly. "You saw a trap and stepped in front of a bullet for a stranger. You have something they don't. Guts." He held out the pen, the same Mont Blanc from the restaurant. "1-year contract. You review my deals. You find the traps. You keep me safe from the white-collar sharks. In exchange, your brother gets the best doctors in the world, and you never have to serve another glass of wine." Riley looked at the pen. Then she looked at the glittering city behind him. This was a deal with the devil. She knew it. If she signed, she would step into a world of shadows, violence, and secrets. But then she thought of Toby, lying in that sterile bed, waiting for a sister who was failing him. She didn't have a choice, and Vincent knew it. She reached out and took the pen. Her fingers brushed his, and a jolt of electricity shot up her arm. Vincent didn't pull away. "Where do I sign?" Riley asked. Vincent smiled, but this time it wasn't the terrifying smile. It was something else, something possessive. "Welcome to the family, Riley." As she signed her name, Riley didn't know that the contract she was reviewing wasn't the only trap in the room. She was the bait, and the sharks were already circling. The Rossi Corporation headquarters was a fortress of steel and glass dominating the financial district. Riley stood in the lobby clutching her new ID badge like a shield. She wore a tailored navy blazer and trousers bought at an outlet mall the night before, trying to look the part of a high-powered consultant. She felt like an imposter. Miss Hale. Riley turned to see a woman with severe glasses and a tablet. "I'm Clara, Mr. Rossi's executive assistant. He's in a meeting, but he instructed me to take you to legal." "Legal?" Riley's stomach twisted. "I thought I was working directly for him." "You report to him," Clara said, voice devoid of warmth. "But your desk is in the legal department on the 40th floor. Mr. Carver is expecting you." Landon Carver. Riley knew the name. He was the chief legal officer for the Rossi Syndicate. Rumored to be sharper than a razor and twice as cold. He was the one who should have caught the contract error Riley had found. When Riley entered the conference room, conversation died instantly. 12 lawyers in expensive Italian suits turned to stare. At the head of the table sat Landon Carver, handsome in a slimy way, slicked back blonde hair, a smile that never reached his eyes. "Ah," Carver said, rising slowly, "the waitress." A ripple of snickering crossed the room. Riley lifted her chin. "It's Riley, and I'm the new internal auditor." "Auditor," Carver repeated, tasting the word like spoiled milk. "Mr. Rossi seems to think that because you can read a menu, you can read complex corporate litigation. Let's test that theory, shall we?" He signaled to an intern who dropped a stack of banker's boxes onto the empty table in the corner. The thud was heavy. "These are the transaction records for the Jersey Port construction project from the last 5 years, Carver said, checking his Rolex. "We're being audited by the IRS next week. I need you to reconcile the union payouts with the actual labor hours. You have until tomorrow morning." It was an impossible task, thousands of pages, busy work designed to break her. "If you can't handle it," Carver smiled, "I can call the Onyx Room and see if they need a busboy." Riley looked at the mountain of paper, then at Carver. She didn't flinch. "I'll have it done by 5. Carver laughed. "5? Honey, you won't even be halfway through the first box." Riley didn't argue. She sat down, pulled out a highlighter, and went to work. She didn't read every word. She didn't have to. She looked for patterns. Numbers were a language, and Riley was fluent. She ignored the lawyers whispering about her. She ignored lunch. She entered a trance, eyes scanning columns of figures, cross-referencing dates and times. By 2 o'clock, she had found the first anomaly. By 3, she had the pattern. By 4:30, she knew exactly what Landon Carver was hiding. At 4:55, the double doors burst open. The room went silent. Vincent Rossi strode in. He wasn't wearing a jacket. His tie was loosened. He looked like a storm cloud rolling across the sky. "Carver," Vincent barked. "The blueprints for the casino, where are they?" Carver jumped up, flustered. "Sir, we're still finalizing the zoning permits. I didn't want to—" "I don't pay you to want things, Landon. I pay you to get them done." Vincent's eyes swept the room and landed on Riley in the corner, buried behind a wall of boxes. His expression softened instantly. "Riley, what are you doing?" "Mr. Carver gave me an orientation task," she said, standing. Her legs were stiff. Vincent looked at the boxes, then at Carver, eyes narrowing. "I told you to give her the merger files, Landon, not hazing duties." "She needs to learn the ropes, Vincent," Carver said smoothly. "I figured she could cut her teeth on the grunt work." "I finished," Riley said. Carver scoffed. "Impossible. You couldn't have." "I didn't reconcile the whole 5 years," Riley admitted, "because I didn't need to. The pattern is obvious." After 6 months, she picked up a single sheet of paper covered in her notes. She walked past the stunned lawyers and handed it to Vincent. "The union payouts," she said clearly. "Every 3rd Friday, there's a bulk payment to a staffing agency called Titan Workforce. But if you cross-reference with the site logs, Titan never sends workers on Fridays. The site is closed for inspections on those days. Vincent scanned the paper. His jaw tightened. It's a ghost payroll, Riley continued. Someone is billing the company for 200 phantom workers every month. That's about $400,000 leaking out of the Jersey project every single month. The room was deathly silent. Vincent looked up from the paper at Landon Carver. Landon? Vincent's voice was dangerously low. Who owns Titan Workforce? Carver was sweating now. I'd have to check the registry. It's a subcontractor. Vincent, these things happen. I checked, Riley interjected. It's a shell company registered in the Cayman Islands, but the signatory on the bank account is an LH Holdings. She looked at Carver. LH, Landon Hayes, your initials, Mr. Carver. Vincent didn't yell. He didn't flip the table. He simply walked over to Carver. The violence radiating off him was palpable. You're stealing from me, Vincent whispered. No, Vincent, listen. It's a contingency fund. I was holding it for... Vincent raised a hand. Two of his personal security guards stepped into the room. Escort Mr. Carver to the basement, Vincent said. We're going to have a long conversation about loyalty. Vincent, you can't do this. I know where the bodies are buried, Carver screamed as the guards grabbed him. Yes, Vincent replied coldly, and soon you'll be joining them. As Carver was dragged out screaming, the other lawyers stared at their desks, terrified to breathe. Vincent turned to Riley. Come with me. He led her down the hall into his private office. The moment the door clicked shut, the terrifying mask dropped. He let out a long exhale and ran a hand through his hair. You have a habit of saving me money, Riley, he said, leaning back against his heavy oak desk. He was sloppy, Riley answered, heart still racing. He thought I was stupid. Most people do. That's your superpower. Vincent walked to the wet bar and poured 2 glasses of scotch. He handed one to her. Drink. You look like you're about to pass out. Riley took the glass. Her hands shook. Are you really going to kill him? She asked. Vincent looked at her over the rim of his glass. He stole $5 million from my family. In my world, Riley, betrayal is a capital offense. If I let him live, I look weak. If I look weak, my enemies attack, and then more people die. He stepped closer, gray eyes searching hers. This is the world you signed up for. Can you handle it? Riley took a sip of the burning liquid. She thought of the hospital bills. She thought of the adrenaline that had rushed through her when she caught Carver. I can handle the numbers, she said steadily. You handle the monsters. Vincent smiled, a genuine dark smile that made her knees weak. He reached out and tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. His fingers lingered on her jawline. Smart girl, he murmured. But be careful, Riley. Sometimes the monsters are the ones signing your checks. The air between them crackled with electricity. For a moment, Riley thought he was going to kiss her. She wanted him to. Go home, Vincent said abruptly, pulling his hand away. Get some rest. Tomorrow night is the gala, and I need you by my side. The gala? The Winter Solstice Charity Ball. Every crooked politician and rival boss in New York will be there. And since you just fired my chief legal counsel, you're taking his place. I don't have a dress for that, Riley stammered. Don't worry, Vincent said, turning back to his desk. I'll take care of it. The box arrived at her apartment the next afternoon, wrapped in black silk. Inside lay a dress that cost more than Riley's lifetime earnings. Emerald green velvet, floor length, with a slit up the left leg and a back that plunged dangerously low. Elegant, sophisticated, devastating. With it came diamond drop earrings and a note. Wear these. The car is downstairs. When Riley stepped out of her building, the neighborhood kids stopped playing ball to stare. She looked like a movie star who had taken a wrong turn into Queens. Vincent was waiting inside the limo. When she slid in, he actually stopped speaking on his phone. He hung up without saying goodbye and simply stared. Green, he said, voice husky. For money, for envy, Riley corrected, smoothing the velvet over her lap. Because every woman there is going to hate me for being with you. Vincent chuckled. He looked dashing in a black tuxedo with a velvet bow tie. You look adequate. High praise from the boss. As the car wove through traffic toward the Pierre Hotel, Vincent's demeanor shifted. He became serious. He reached into his jacket and pulled out a delicate silver bracelet. "Give me your wrist." Riley extended her arm. He clasped the bracelet on. It was heavy. "This isn't jewelry," he said. "It's a tracker and a panic button. If you feel unsafe, if anyone corners you, press the charm for 3 seconds. My security team will be on you in under a minute." "Is tonight going to be dangerous?" "Tonight is a show of force," Vincent answered, staring out the window. With Carver gone, the other families smell blood in the water, specifically the Calabrese family. Victor Calabrese has been trying to take the harbor for years. He'll be there. He turned to her, gaze intense. "Stay close to me. Don't talk to anyone you don't know, and listen to your gut." The ballroom at the Pierre was a sea of jewels, expensive perfumes, and fake smiles. A string quartet played Mozart in the corner. Waiters moved like ghosts with trays of champagne. When Vincent Rossi walked in with Riley on his arm, the room seemed to tilt. Conversations paused. Heads turned. "Smile," Vincent whispered in her ear, his hand warm on the small of her back. "They're sharks. Don't let them see you bleed." Riley smiled. She held her head high, channeling every ounce of confidence she had faked for years while waiting tables for rich snobs. They circulated. Vincent introduced her simply as, "My associate, Miss Hale." He offered no further explanation. Let them wonder. Halfway through the night, an older man approached. Silver hair, face carved from granite, surrounded by 4 men who looked more like soldiers than guests. "Vincent," the man said, voice like gravel. "Victor," Vincent replied, grip tightening imperceptibly on Riley's waist. "Victor Calabrese, the rival Donrio." Calabrese's eyes slid to Riley. He looked her up and down, lingering uncomfortably on the slit in her dress. "A new pet. She's pretty. A bit skinny for my taste, though." Anger flared inside Riley, but she kept her smile fixed. "Miss Hale is the reason I didn't sign your little trap deal with Marcus Reed," Vincent said smoothly. "She has a brain, Victor. I know that's a foreign concept to you." Calabrese's eyes narrowed. The air temperature seemed to drop 10 degrees. "Is that so? The waitress who reads law, I heard about you." He stepped closer to Riley. "Clever girls can get hurt in this city, Miss Hale. Sometimes it's better to stay in the kitchen." Riley looked Victor Calabrese dead in the eye. "And sometimes, Mr. Calabrese, it's better to check your own books. I hear the IRS is taking a renewed interest in waste management imports this quarter." It was mostly a bluff. She had read an article in the Wall Street Journal, but it hit home. Calabrese's face twitched. "Enjoy the party, Vincent, while it lasts." He walked away. "You have a sharp tongue," Vincent murmured, guiding her toward the dance floor. "I like it." He pulled her into a waltz. For a few minutes, the danger faded. There was only the music, the warmth of his body against hers, and the way he looked at her like she was the only person in the room. "You're doing well," he said softly. "I'm terrified," she admitted. "Good, fear keeps you sharp." Vincent spun her. As she turned, Riley's eyes swept the perimeter. She saw the usual security details, the bored socialites. Then she saw a waiter carrying a tray of empty glasses toward the kitchen doors, near where Victor Calabrese stood. Something was wrong. Riley had been a waitress for years. She knew the uniform codes at the Pierre. Waiters wore polished Oxfords. This man wore heavy rubber-soled combat boots. And he wasn't looking at the glasses. He was looking at Vincent's back. The waiter's hand dipped under the silver tray. Riley saw the glint of black metal. "Down!" she screamed. She didn't think. She threw her entire body weight against Vincent, shoving him hard to the right. Crack, crack. 2 gunshots shattered the music. A crystal vase on the table behind where Vincent had been standing exploded. Screams erupted. The ballroom descended into chaos. People dropped to the floor, diamonds clattering against the parquet. Vincent hit the ground hard, pulling Riley down with him. He rolled instantly, covering her body with his own. "Stay down!" he roared. Security was already moving. "Shooter, kitchen doors!" Vincent's hand went to his waistband, pulling a sleek handgun from a concealed holster. He wasn't the businessman anymore. He was the killer. "Did you see him?" he demanded, scanning the crowd. "The waiter," Riley gasped, pressed against the floor, smelling carpet and gunpowder. He was wearing combat boots. More shots fired near the exit. Vincent's security team was engaging. "We have to move," Vincent said. He grabbed her arm. "Run!" They scrambled up, staying low. Vincent fired 2 shots toward a figure emerging from the shadows. Suppressive fire. He dragged Riley through a side exit, down a service corridor, and out into the cool night air of a loading dock. The black Maybach screeched around the corner seconds later. The driver, a giant named Bruno, threw the back door open. Vincent shoved Riley inside and dove in after her. "Go, go!" The tires smoked as the car peeled out, speeding away from the hotel before the sirens even began to wail. In the back seat, heavy silence fell. Riley was shaking uncontrollably. The adrenaline was crashing. Vincent turned to her. He was breathing hard, hair messy, tie undone. He grabbed her shoulders. "Are you hit, Riley? Look at me. Are you hit?" "No," she stammered. I don't think so." Vincent checked her over quickly, hands moving professionally but frantically. No blood. Then Riley looked at him. "Vincent, your arm." Blood was soaking through the white sleeve of his tuxedo shirt near the shoulder. "It's a graze," he said, dismissing it. He stared at her with an intensity that burned. "You pushed me. You saw him before my own men did." "He was wearing the wrong shoes," Riley whispered, tears finally spilling over. "Waiters don't wear combat boots." Vincent let out a harsh laugh full of disbelief and relief. He reached out and pulled her into his chest, holding her tight, his good arm wrapping around her like a vice. "You saved my life," he whispered into her hair. Again. Riley buried her face in his shirt, smelling blood and cologne. She realized with a jolt of terror that she wasn't just working for him anymore. She was falling for him. And in this world, love was the most dangerous trap of all. "Where are we going?" she asked, voice muffled against his chest. "The safe house," Vincent said grimly, "because war has just been declared, and you're right in the middle of it." The safe house wasn't a house. It was a fortress of concrete and glass buried deep in the Catskill Mountains, hours north of the city. The Maybach crunched over snow-packed gravel, passing through a heavy iron gate that slammed shut with a finality that made Riley shiver. Vincent had been silent for the last hour of the drive. His face was pale, beads of sweat standing out on his forehead in the stark moonlight. The graze on his arm was bleeding through the makeshift tourniquet Riley had applied in the car. "We're here, boss," Bruno said, killing the engine. The silence of the mountains was deafening after the chaos of the gala. "Help him," Riley commanded, jumping out. She wasn't asking. Bruno looked at her with new respect and nodded, moving to support Vincent's weight. Vincent groaned, teeth gritted, but didn't protest. They half-carried him into the main hall, a cavernous space with a slate fireplace and minimal furniture. "I need a first aid kit, a real one," Riley ordered, "and whiskey and hot water." "Kitchen," Vincent rasped, slumping onto a leather sofa. "Cabinet above the fridge. There's a surgical kit." Bruno disappeared to secure the perimeter, leaving Riley alone with the most dangerous man in New York, who currently looked like a broken soldier. Riley moved fast. She found the kit, military grade, stocked with sutures, lidocaine, and gauze. She returned to the living room, poured a glass of whiskey. "Drink," she said, kneeling between his legs. Vincent took the glass with a shaking hand and downed it in one swallow. He watched her as she cut away the ruined sleeve of his tuxedo shirt. The fabric peeled back to reveal a nasty gash across his deltoid. It wasn't deep enough to hit the artery, but it was ugly, and it needed stitches. "You've done this before," Vincent observed, voice strained. "My brother tried to fix a broken window when he was 12. He put his arm through it," Riley said, voice steady despite the trembling in her hands. "I couldn't afford the ER, I learned." She cleaned the wound with antiseptic. Vincent hissed, muscles seizing under her touch. "Sorry," she whispered. Don't be, he grunted. Pain means I'm alive. She threaded the needle. This is going to hurt. I don't know how to do the numbing shot properly. I don't want to hit a nerve. So I have to do it without. Vincent looked at her. His gray eyes were dark, dilated with pain and adrenaline. Do it. Riley began to stitch. She focused entirely on the needle, the skin, the thread. 1 stitch, 2. She could feel the heat radiating off him. She could feel his eyes on her face, tracking every micro-expression. Why didn't you run? Vincent asked softly. Riley paused, hands hovering over his skin. What? At the gala, when the shooting started, most people run away from gunfire. You threw yourself in front of me. Riley tied off a knot. I told you, I hate it when bullies win. That's not an answer, Riley. She finished the last stitch and taped the gauze down. She sat back on her heels, wiping her blood-stained hands on a towel. She looked up at him. The distance between them was almost nothing. You're the only person who has ever helped me without asking for something in return, she admitted quietly. You saved Toby. You paid for his treatment. You gave me a purpose. I gave you a job, Vincent corrected. I put you in danger. You gave me a life, she countered. Before you, I was drowning. Now I'm terrified. Yes, but I'm awake. Vincent reached out with his good arm. His hand cupped her cheek, thumb brushing over her bottom lip. The air in the room grew heavy, charged with the electricity that had been building between them since that first night at the Onyx Room. You are a dangerous woman, Riley Hale, he whispered. You make me want to be careless. Is that bad? In my line of work, it's fatal. He leaned down. Riley leaned up. The kiss wasn't gentle. It was desperate. It tasted of whiskey and danger. Vincent groaned low in his throat, fingers tangling in her hair, pulling her closer. Riley climbed onto the sofa, straddling his lap, careful of his injured arm. She kissed him like it was the last night on Earth, because for all she knew, it might be. For a moment, the mafia, the assassins, the contracts, all of it disappeared. There was only the fire in the hearth and the heat of his body. But the moment was shattered by the front door slamming open. Riley scrambled off his lap, smoothing her dress. Vincent's hand went instantly to the gun on the table. It was Bruno, looking grim. He was holding a laptop. Boss, he said, averting his eyes from the obvious scene he had interrupted. We have a problem. The tech boys had scrubbed the hotel security footage before the cops got it. They had a clean shot of the shooter's face. Vincent's demeanor shifted instantly. The lover vanished. The dawn returned. He sat up, wincing slightly. Show me. Bruno turned the laptop. On the screen was a grainy freeze frame of the waiter in the kitchen, young, pale, with a tattoo on his neck. I know him, Vincent said, voice turning to ice. That's Tommy the Rat Rossi. He's a low-level enforcer for the Rossi family. So it was Victor Rossi, Riley said, feeling a chill. He threatened you right before it happened. That's what it looks like, Vincent said, narrowing his eyes at the screen. But Tommy is a coward. He wouldn't take a suicide mission inside the Pierre Hotel unless the payoff was retirement money, 7 figures minimum. Rossi has the money, Bruno said. Rossi is cash poor, Vincent corrected. I saw his books last month when we negotiated the Union territory. He's leveraged to the hilt. He couldn't liquidate $1 million in cash without raising flags. He looked at Riley. You're the auditor. Follow the money. Riley stepped forward, mind snapping back into professional mode. Bruno, do we have access to the banking clearinghouse logs, the ones we used to track the Titan workforce payments? Yeah, Bruno grunted. The server is live. Riley sat at the coffee table and began to type. If Tommy had been paid recently, it would be crypto or an offshore wire. If offshore, it had to pass through a Swift node. She worked in silence for minutes. The fire crackled. Vincent watched her, expression unreadable. Got him, Riley whispered. She spun the laptop. A wire transfer of $2 million hit a shell account in the Cayman Islands yesterday morning. The beneficiary is a holding company linked to Tommy's sister. Who sent it? Vincent demanded. That's the strange part. Riley frowned. The origin account isn't Rossi. It's a blind trust, Aurora Holdings. I don't know an Aurora, she muttered, typing furiously. I'm tracing the IP address of the authorization. Whoever authorized the transfer didn't use a VPN. They were arrogant. She hit enter. A map popped up. A single red dot blinked. Riley felt the blood drain from her face. She looked at Vincent, fear in her eyes. Where is it? He asked. The IP matches a secure server, Riley said, voice trembling. It's coming from inside the Rossi estate in the Hamptons. Vincent went still. My uncle's house. Gino, Bruno gasped. Boss, Gino raised you. He's the chairman. He's also the one who insisted I attend the gala, Vincent said, voice hollow. He said it was important for family unity. Riley looked at the data again. Vincent looked at the timestamp on the transfer. It had been authorized by a biometric login. She clicked the file open. The name on the digital signature wasn't Victor Rossi. It was Luca Rossi, Vincent's younger brother. The silence inside the cabin pressed down on them, heavier than the snow piling against the windows outside. It wasn't peaceful. It was the kind that waited for something to break. Luca, Vincent whispered. The name scraped out of his throat like broken glass. He didn't turn around when he said it, as if facing the truth might make it real. My own brother. Riley didn't rush her answer. She knew this wasn't just information, it was a death sentence. The biometric authorization is airtight, she said quietly. Luca approved a $2 million transfer. The recipient was the man who tried to kill you tonight. Vincent stood. He moved to the window, staring into the black wilderness beyond the glass. His reflection hovered there, pale, hollow-eyed, already half a ghost. Luca is weak, he said at last. He's always been weak. He gambles, he borrows, he begs. But murder, a bitter breath left him. He doesn't have the spine, Riley replied. Not if someone stronger was guiding his hand. Vincent's jaw tightened. Victor. He's cash poor, Riley continued. You said it yourself. If you died, control of the trust passes to the next male heir. Vincent closed his eyes. Luca. And Luca would sell everything, Bruno snarled, spitting onto the floor. The ports, the lanes, all of it, just to pay off his debts. When Vincent turned back, the grief was gone. What replaced it was colder than anger, precise, lethal resolve. Get the car, he told Bruno. Where to, boss? The Hamptons? Vincent's voice was steady now. Uncle Gino is hosting an emergency board meeting. Funny how fast they move when they think I'm dead. Riley stood abruptly. Vincent, you can't. You're injured. You've lost blood. And if Luca has turned, the guards will be loyal to him. You're walking into an execution. I am the execution, Vincent replied. He crossed to the gun cabinet, unlocked it, and pulled out a rifle. The metallic click echoed in the room. You're staying here, he added. I'll leave men to guard you. No. The word cut clean. Vincent turned slowly. Excuse me? You need me, Riley said. Arms crossed, posture unyielding. You storm in with a gun and you look like a madman attacking his grieving brother. The board will turn. The police will follow. You'll lose everything. She lifted the laptop. I don't bring bullets. I bring proof. I discredit him first. Then you decide what justice looks like. For a long moment, Vincent simply stared at her. She wasn't shaking. She wasn't pleading. She wasn't the frightened waitress from the gala anymore. She was a partner. You're infuriating, he muttered. I'm essential. A sharp exhale escaped him. 5 minutes. If you're not in the car, we leave. They reached the Rossi estate as dawn bled into the snow, staining it pink and gold. The mansion loomed above the ocean, windows glowing, perimeter crawling with armed men. They're on alert, Bruno murmured. They think you're dead, but they're expecting revenge. We don't use the front, Vincent said. There's a service entrance through the sea caves. We used it when we were kids. They abandoned the car and moved on foot. The cold cut through bone. Riley's dress dragged in the snow, ruined, but Vincent's coat swallowed her in warmth. The tunnel smelled of salt and stone. It opened into the wine cellar. Silent. Bruno took point, disabling a kitchen guard before the man could breathe a word. Voices drifted from the dining room. Vincent was brilliant but reckless, Uncle Gino was saying. We must stabilize the markets. Another voice, nervous, eager. I'm prepared to lead. Vincent stopped outside the doors. He met Riley's eyes. Ready? She nodded, gripping the laptop like a weapon. Bruno kicked the doors open. The sound exploded through the room. Vincent Rossi stepped inside, bloodstained, upright, very much alive. You're early for my funeral, he said calmly. Luca went white. Vincent, you're... Sit, Vincent ordered. Luca obeyed. They didn't pay for the bullet, Vincent continued, advancing slowly. They paid you. He nodded to Riley. Show them. The screen lit up. Transfer authorized. Sender, Luca Rossi. Biometric verified. Recipient, Tommy Rossi. Amount, $2 million. A collective gasp swept the table. Gino stood, trembling. Luca, it's fake, Luca screamed. She forged it. She's a spy. Vincent leaned down behind him, voice low and lethal. You were never good at lying. Luca broke. I had to, he shouted, lunging to his feet. You were ruining everything. Calabrese offered peace. He offered you a leash, Vincent said. Luca reached inside his jacket. Don't. The gun came out anyway. The shot echoed. Luca stiffened, staring at the blood blooming across his shirt before collapsing. Vincent hadn't fired. Riley stood frozen, smoke curling from the barrel in her hand. The room held its breath. Vincent crossed to her, gently taking the gun. Meeting adjourned, he said. As they walked out together, Riley knew one thing with chilling clarity. Luca was dead, but the war had just begun. And that is the story of how one waitress with a sharp eye and a sharper mind took down the biggest crime lord in the city and then saved him. It proves that in a world of muscle and guns, the most dangerous weapon is always intelligence. Riley didn't just read the fine print, she rewrote the whole game. If you enjoyed this twisty mafia romance and want to see more stories where the underdog hits back with hard karma, hit that like button. It really helps the channel grow. Don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss the next part. What would you do if you found a trap in a $1 billion contract? Let me know in the comments below. Thanks for watching, and see you in the next one.